1077 The Bronx and 1077thebronx.com. Proudly ranked the best college radio station in New Jersey by the New Jersey Broadcasters Association. Live from the Killarney's Public House Studios. It is 4:02 in Lawrenceville. Welcome, everybody. It's the Political Roundup. I'm Tommy Franks. So, and if you want to contact us about this show, I just set up an email account. It is literally thepoliticalroundup@gmail.com. Okay. Not a lot happened this week. But first, I wanted to talk about my experience last week. On Friday, I went to Bordentown for a book event, and I enjoyed the experience. And I got to meet the author of the book that everyone came to celebrate for. It was none other than Bill O'Reilly, the former Fox News host and the author of the new book, Killing the SS. It was very fascinating discussion. Afterwards, I got a VIP ticket from last Friday. I ended up getting to meet Bill briefly. He was actually quite humorous during the event. You know, he spoke about the history of the SS during the Holocaust and, you know, how the Nazis came to be. All the research was done by Martin Dugard, his researcher. And, you know, Bill was a firm, serious guy in person. I got to see him last year in Pittman. And he's quite interesting. He's got a lot to say. And after the event, he was running late to the event. And it was supposed to be originally, you know, meet and greet Bill beforehand. And so we waited. He ended up getting in late from Long Island to the event, so we ended up pushing till after. And of course, after everything was done, he was late. He was running out the door, and there was a line of the people who got tickets to meet him, such as myself and my father. And I got my picture with him, but he was like, you know, one picture with one person, and then, you know, next out, next on. Firm, serious guy. I got to talk to him about my college major and a little bit, very briefly, but he had to get going. So it was a very quick conversation, and he was kind enough at least to do that. But it was still interesting to go, and you know, definitely check out his podcast, too. He's got some interesting things to say and some fair analysis. Okay, now we've been hearing a lot more about the Jim Acosta situation. As I predicted last week, not easy to predict this one, that CNN would file a lawsuit against the White House because of Acosta's press credentials being stripped. So the court ruling from the federal judge came down that Jim Acosta should be given his credentials back. Okay, and the reason for that was because, and I'm paraphrasing what the judge said, it was because it does not matter how, quote, rude he is, in this case, the correspondent, and that doesn't give grounds to strip credentials. So that was interesting to me. This came Friday, I think 10 o'clock in the morning, I think, if I remember correctly. But that was a very interesting ruling. It was a Trump appointee judge, believe it or not, and I was quite shocked. But I found it interesting, and I questioned, well, but doesn't the president have a little bit of, you know, power as to who can come in and out? He's not regulating the press. I had that question myself. You know, I wanted to tell a story to kind of compare to this. I had a situation about 6 years ago. Yeah, at a birthday party when I was about 12 years old at my house. A former friend of mine, he came to the party and everything. It was an outside setup, so there was like the pool, the video games, you know, the whole thing. I was, I think, turning 11 or 12. I'm 19 now, so about 7 years ago. He came in, and you know, he was fine. And my friend's stepsister was there also. my former friend ended up, don't ask me why, but he pushed her down the steps, and he was trying to show off, I guess, and that did not fly well with my parents, and my aunt happened to be there too, and they were all furious as to what was going on. At least my mother was, and I was told about the situation. I had no idea what had happened, and my mom said to me, "Tommy, do you want to kick him out?" I won't talk about his name or mention his name, but just, "Do you want to kick him out?" I said, "Well, what happened?" She tells me everything that happened. I said, "Okay, you can decide that. I don't want to make that call. I don't want to be that guy." Okay, so they did. My mother said respectfully, "You know what? Please leave." That didn't sit well with the parents, for that matter, of this individual, and the father ended up seeing my father at a hockey rink where we were all playing, and when I was a hockey player, and he was getting in my father's face, pointing at him, and it was crazy to see because it was in front of 11 or 12-year-olds. The comparison I'm making to this is that if you have someone who comes into your house and treats you with very little respect for being at your house, isn't the same thing happening here with Jim Acosta? It would seem that way to me, because quite frankly, he goes up there, and now we're going to look at the other side here. Jim Acosta went into the White House. He gave his opinion on the caravan through the President of the United States in a live, nationally televised press conference. Gives his opinion on the caravan, and then starts going on and on, was told to give the mic away. He refused. So in that case, the president in this should have every right to strip away credentials. CNN has still every right to report on the President of the United States, write whatever they want about the President of the United States. He did not regulate CNN's press pass. Actually, Jim Acosta was able to still report. He could be reporting outside of the White House still. Technically, well, outside White House grounds. But, he wouldn't be allowed in the briefing room. And that did not fly with Jim Acosta, apparently. He has to have everything. That's like getting $20 and saying, "Well, I want $100 bill." You can never be happy. And you need everything. And as far as I remember, if I remember correctly, that was temporary, stripping away his press pass. That wasn't going to be permanently. And it was odd to me how Acosta dealt with this after the fact, after the judge ruled in favor, shockingly, of CNN. Acosta goes back into the White House, back at the White House, and he walks up and he goes to the podium and he says, "Hello, everybody." He's talking. All the reporters are snapping shots of him and everything. He goes up to the podium and he basically says, "Hello, everybody. It's a great day and everything." He goes up to the podium and he says, "Does anybody have any questions?" So it's almost like, and you know what that signaled to me? That signaled to me that Acosta had quite the ego, right? I mean, look, if he's going up there acting like this is all about him, which is basically what it looks like his intent was, if I can analyze from the outside, it looked exactly like that. That his original intent with this entire debacle with the president was to make it about himself. And Acosta really, if you look at it, wasn't fair to the other journalists who also had questions, right? I mean, he's not the only one there with questions. So now Trump proposed a new rule. By the way, he had a very interesting conversation with Chris Wallace of Fox News. He was talking to Chris Wallace, and he was talking about the fact that about Acosta, and he says, the federal judge ruled that we need to write rules out. Okay, he says they're in the process of doing that. That's fine. That's a good thing. Then the White House has something to cite for their arguments. Okay. So now Trump's talking about Acosta, and then he hints at taking credentials away from other correspondents. Well, that made news for sure. I saw a lot of hit articles on the president for this, and saying, he wants to strip away the First Amendment and abolish the First Amendment, free speech, get rid of the press. No. If you have a correspondent grandstanding inside the press room, giving his opinion, which is not the job of a journalist, actually. So that's a fact. The journalist is not supposed to give his or her opinion on the situation that's being discussed in that press conference. Donald Trump is not looking to strip away press rights, but rather he is simply trying to make the public look at this and say, what is going on? Like with Acosta, he wants to put the spotlight on him and say, this is not a fair reporter. But now Trump said what he's going to do with Acosta now. And by the way, just as before our show started, the White House announced that he would be backing, this is from Politico, White House backs off the CNN fight. The White House has fully restored Jim Acosta's press pass, and that his lawsuit against the administration is no longer necessary. All right. So then, now Acosta has full access. The White House is no longer challenging. So, okay. Now CNN has nothing to, I guess, complain about now. So, Acosta can go back in there, and Trump proposed just simply icing him. Meaning, if you ice Jim Acosta, this means you don't call on him, you let him sit there or stand there, however the press conference is operated. You make him stand there, and he doesn't get to ask questions. The same goes for Sarah Sanders, by the way, in her press conferences. Trump hinted at doing that. So that was quite interesting, an idea, at least, because you're not stripping away his credentials. He still has access to the White House, but yet, the president doesn't have to. Technically, by rules, the president doesn't have to call on certain individual people. That's how they're looking at this. So they're saying, you know what? We'll bite the bullet. We'll keep him in there. We don't have to ask him questions. We are not obligated to. He can stand there, and guess what happens if Jim Acosta decides to stand up and say, why aren't you calling on me? Why aren't you calling on me, Sarah or Mr. President? And simply, what's going to happen with the other correspondents when in that press room? What's going to happen? How do you think they are going to react when Jim Acosta starts to act like that? They're not going to be too happy with him because they want their questions also to whoever's at the podium at the time. So this might look good for Jim Acosta, but is it really? Now, the good example of a journalist of integrity, you have to go back and watch this interview that Donald Trump did with Chris Wallace. It was actually the job of a journalist is to get information. That is your primary goal, is to get information from who you're talking to. Chris Wallace did a heck of a job doing that. We got a lot out of the president, as far as what he'd do with this, for example, the special counsel, the CNN lawsuit, and how he's going to go further, pressing him on other issues as far as politics go, which we're going to get into more with this incoming Congress, looking like a Democrat majority by about interview was quite eye-opening. And that's how every interview should be conducted. You're trying to get answers. You're not there to give your opinion. Chris Wallace did a heck of a job of doing that. And if you didn't see that interview, I urge you to go watch it, because while it was challenging, he did challenge him quite a lot, I would say. It was the type of fair interview you'd want to see from the president. You could feel it. He was challenged. Trump had to be more specific in his answers and not just be broad like he always is. That's the job of the journalist, is to ask questions, dive deep, and get answers. Not give your opinion or be a so-called activist or ignite a debate. We really need to return to things like that. And journalists can also do a better job. Not just Jim Acosta, of course, but other journalists can do a better job of doing that. Jim Acosta can go back to the briefing room, and we'll see where he goes with this. I mean, he doesn't have, obviously, the greatest relationship with the White House, obviously. He hasn't really ever since Donald Trump announced, if I remember correctly. So the administration, is just going to bite the bullet, see how long he's going to stay there. Or, see how long he's going to be holding it in as far as asking questions goes, or grandstanding, if you will. But that is something to look at. And I predict right now that there will come a day, maybe in a month or so, or even a couple weeks, but I think no more than a month, that Jim Acosta says, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to get up right now, and I'm going to do what the people who do not like the president want me to do. And that is get up, make a scene, and that's how it's going to work. So it's going to be interesting how Jim Acosta plays this. And April Ryan is someone who is like that also. So she's the one who also started shouting questions at the president and all this stuff. It's going to be something to watch. And so I look forward to what's going to happen in the press conferences. And it will be interesting. When we come back in about 4:20ish, or almost 4:30ish, I wanted to talk to you about the Florida recount. I intended to talk with you about the recount effort, and finally, Bill Nelson, the incumbent senator, has conceded to the Senator-elect Rick Scott, the governor of Florida. Abrams kind of conceding, kind of not, and in Georgia. And Ron DeSantis is the governor-elect officially of the state of Florida. Okay, when we get back, there's also more to talk about. Trump is now helping Pelosi. How come? Because she wants the speakership, and she's looking to be in some trouble right now. Also, Trump says in that Chris Wallace interview that Mueller, the answers are sent through, and they will be there by next week. Those were his exact words. Orange County in California, something to look at by the big flip of the House. When we come back, 107.7 The Bronx and 107.7thebronx.com. Keep it here. 107.7 The Bronx and 107.7thebronx.com, live from the Killarney's Public House Studios. Welcome back, everybody. It's the Political Roundup. I'm Tommy Franks. Any thoughts on the show, please email thepoliticalroundup@gmail.com. Once again, thepoliticalroundup@gmail.com. Okay, so the Florida recount. You look at as I just announced earlier before we went to break, Rick Scott is up about 10,000 votes approximately on Bill Nelson. They have called the race for Rick Scott. He is up in the recount. Despite all the controversy in Broward County and possibly Palm Beach County, it looks like Rick Scott will flip a Senate seat in Florida, interestingly enough. Looks like also Ron DeSantis will win the governorship of Florida. Gillum, the mayor of Tallahassee, has finally conceded. And Stacey Abrams is kind of conceding. I read this on Friday. Kind of conceding, but yet claiming Kemp cheated and is accusing him of voter suppression. And Hillary is on her side, Hillary Clinton. A lot there, but I think the Republicans hold all those seats because there's not enough votes to flip any of those. But two of the races have already been called, governorship especially, and Abrams has also declared that Kemp will be the governor. But she hinted at lawsuits, I think, so we'll have to look into that more. All right. I wanted to talk about Protect Mueller, the so-called amendment, this new bill coming up by Jeff Flake and Chris Coons of Delaware. Quite interesting in the Senate. They're writing a bill to, quote, protect Mueller, Robert Mueller, the special counsel. And I don't know if you can constitutionally do that. I don't have a law degree, obviously, but I mean, just from basic constitutional knowledge, the special counsel is overseen by who? The special counsel is overseen by the executive branch because it is overseen by the DOJ. In this case, the acting attorney general now. It used to be the deputy attorney general. Now it's the acting attorney general overseeing the Mueller investigation into Russia collusion, possibly with the president. And who are these? What branch are these people from writing this bill? That's right, they're part of the legislative branch. There's one branch of government doesn't have the power, the constitutional power to take skips into leadership and all of a sudden say that they're going to protect Mueller. Protect him how? By preventing the president, who has a constitutional right to fire him, from firing him? I don't think the president will, but it makes zero sense. I'm surprised no one's argued that. And I'm very surprised. I haven't heard that yet, but it occurred to me. Separation of the separation of the three branches. There is equal power in the legislative and the executive branch. What are they trying to do? What are the Democrats and some Republicans trying to do here in the legislative branch? Are they trying to strip Trump's rights of firing people? I don't understand. Trump has never fired him. Trump has never indicated he will fire him publicly. The only evidence that you would have for saying that Trump did indicate that is from an anonymous report, which we all have to take with a grain of salt. So I don't understand really why we are going down this path of let's get this passed. I think it's right to protect Mueller. Well, really? Is it? Constitutionally speaking, I think Mueller should be able to do his job and go through, because I think he's just about to finish. If you look, the President of the United States has said that, in the Chris Wallace interview, by the way, another piece of information given to us from the president, Trump said he has submitted, he actually corrected Chris Wallace, who said, your aides or your team is writing up the answers. Trump goes, no, I'm writing the answers. So he totally shuts down that argument and says, no, I'm writing down the answers. I'm submitting the answers to the questions, because right now, for those who don't know, he's filing affidavits. He's answering written questions. Now, I assume this is going to prompt Mueller to bring Trump in for a live 1v1 interview. That's possible too. But if you're asking for written questions, this is probably just clarifying things, making sure that there's no contradictory here. And you got to be careful if you're the president, obviously, or part of his legal team. You got to be careful with this whole thing because they can get you on perjury fast. If one person contradicts, it's done. You'll see big problems. So you got to be careful with that. But I do think it is coming to a close, given Rosenstein indicated in a report that he was looking to signal to an end to the Mueller investigation. It's probably to save his job, honestly. At least the job he had of overseeing the investigation. Still has the Deputy Attorney General, but now that Jeff Sessions is out, Matt Whitaker, the acting Attorney General, is overseeing this entire process, this massive special counsel investigation. By the way, I'll say it again, headed by the executive branch. Judicial branch has nothing to do with here unless Supreme Court comes in and has to make a ruling, which I doubt will get that far. I think this investigation, once it's finished, there's going to be a lot of chaos. And God only knows how much chaos we get, but there will be something happening for sure. I'm trying to pop up the interview with Trump and Chris Wallace as I'm talking to you here, and it's not. Here we go. So this is what Trump said to Chris Wallace. He, as I mentioned, Trump is writing out the answers and submitting them, and Trump is sounds very confident in this entire interview. He says, "It wasn't a big deal. By the way, it wasn't a big deal. The answers, the questions were asked and answered. It wasn't a big deal. You know, they make it like I had meetings for many, many hours. I got the questions. I responded. We wrote them out. I read them once. I read them a second time. We made some changes. That's it. They're very simple." And Trump follows up. He says, "You know why? I did nothing wrong." So Trump sounds extremely confident. So he's got to be careful with that too. In my view of what he said in that, I think he sounds a little too confident in what's going on here as far as the questions go. Sure, he knows nothing. He believes, let's say from his perspective, nothing came about. Okay. But you're sounding very confident in the idea that he submitted all the questions and he didn't do anything wrong. Okay. And he was also asked, you're submitting written answers to, this is what Chris Wallace is asking him. You're submitting written answers, yes, to the special counsel about the issue of collusion, but not on obstruction of justice. See, that's the job of the journalist, to get the information to the people who watch the interview. That's the job of the journalist. Let's remember that. Anyway, Trump says, well, there was no obstruction of justice. So he's quite firm on where he stands. He said no collusion every day for at least the past year. We know where he stands on on the whole legality of this situation. But then Chris Wallace also gets more. Trump gets more out of, Chris Wallace gets more out of Trump. You look at Trump cites Article 2 of the Constitution for no obstruction of justice, I guess. And Wallace says, quote, "Is that your final position, that there's going to be no sit-down interview and nothing written or in person on obstruction?" Trump says, "I would say probably. Probably. I mean, I can change my mind, but probably. I think we've wasted enough time on this witch hunt, and the answer is probably we're finished." So, look, this can go a million different ways, but it looks to me that the investigation is coming to an end. If in fact Trump did absolutely nothing. All right, we're getting breaking news. I was going to move on to another topic, but we're getting breaking news now from Politico. Quote, this is their headline: "Troops at the United States-Mexican border to start coming home." Remember how Donald Trump sent the troops for the caravan? Sent the military down there? Looks like that's not. Looks like the military will leave. Not many further details on that yet because it's literally breaking. Oh, the Pentagon is set to begin a drawdown of its 5,800 troops from the southwest border, as early as this week. So slowly they're coming home, I guess. And even as the approaching caravan of refugees prompted United States Customs officers to close a port of entry near Tijuana, Mexico. Okay, so they could be sent home by Christmas, is the report, said the Army Lieutenant General Jeffrey Buchanan. Before Christmas. Interesting. The president wanted, what was the number? I think 7,000 or 15,000, something like that, of troops to the border to stop the caravan. If that's if they're coming home, looks like the caravan's not a threat or not even coming. That's very well possible. But we have yet to know. We're just getting reports on that now. I'm sure that will be developing throughout the day. Or evening, rather, because we're at 4:39 now. Now look to, politically speaking, as far as the new House, the incoming House of Representatives. Nancy Pelosi is looking to be the Speaker. However, Trump is out there signaling because Pelosi might not have the votes. This was just reported that 16 Democrats have signed a letter in opposition to her. Interestingly enough, 9 other congressmen and women-elect members, such as Andy Kim included, who we talked about in the 3rd District, the new Democrat winner over Tom MacArthur. He disavowed her during the campaign, Nancy Pelosi, and we have yet to hear if he will support her for the Speaker. I don't know if he will, but anyway, there are 9 other Democrats who disavowed her during the campaign. We don't know who will be voting for her for Speaker. I think I know where Trump's going with this entire thing on Pelosi. And it's quite interesting because he congratulated her after the whole thing. He's got a method of persuasion that is quite interesting. And if you want a good take on persuasion, of a more advanced persuasion, you can look at Scott Adams, who created Dilbert. He's got some very interesting things to say on persuasion. But this is what Trump tweeted on the 17th. He said, quote, "I can get Nancy Pelosi as many votes as she wants in order for her to be Speaker of the House. She deserves this victory. She's earned it. But there are those in her party who are trying to take it away. She will win," with an exclamation point, end quote. That is quite obvious to me what he is trying to do. Now, ask yourself this question if you don't know what he's doing. How did he win in 2016, do you think? Well, what is the number one reason Hillary didn't win? The party's divided. The party was divided at the time between her and Bernie, and the Bernie supporters were so fed up with her, they said, you know what, screw it, we're going to go vote for Trump. They did. And now, it's looking like Trump is trying to divide, unfortunately, the Democrat Party. That is interesting to me because it looks like he might succeed in that because now, look at it this way. Now you have to get the Democrats to say, the Democrats will be asked this question. Do you agree with the president's statement that we should vote for Pelosi? And normally Democrats don't like anything the president does. So if you're a Democrat and you're asked this question, how do we agree with the president? Well, they either have to say they agree with the president, which is rare, which gives him a bipartisan credit, some bipartisan credit, or you go do a total 180 and you call him mentally insane. This plays to Trump, and it's a persuasion tactic because on one hand, you're making the Democrats look good. While making yourself look good as the president by looking bipartisan coming into the new Congress. And by the way, for those of you who are just reading that tweet, you probably thought, well, he's probably just trying to show support. He's trying to get Nancy Pelosi because look at her record. Well, yeah, look at her record. When the Democrats took the majority in 2010, Nancy Pelosi got a lot done for the Democrats. But, legislatively speaking. However, look at the outcome of that. Look at the midterm elections in 2014, while also looking at the 2012 presidential election and what happened in the House and the Senate. The Democrats since 2010, since 2010, lost about 1,000 seats, including state legislatures, governors, you name it, Senate seats, House seats. They've lost tons all over the country since Nancy Pelosi has been Speaker of the House. That's another method to this. Trump wants Pelosi to be the Speaker of the House. He desperately wants it. And now you have the Democrats saying, well, we want to impeach him. Well, that really plays well, doesn't it? Look at Bill Clinton's popularity when he got impeached. It was quite the opposite of what the Republicans intended to do. His popularity went up. Undeniable. It's undeniable. Elected Republicans will tell you today that it was wrong to impeach Bill Clinton and that his popularity went up. Ask Newt Gingrich. He was the Speaker of the House at the time. So I firmly think Trump is doing a couple things here that are quite interesting. Well, to sum up, he wants Pelosi to be the Speaker of the House to knowing her record and going with that. And as far as keeping seats, retaining seats. And while making himself and the Democrats across the country look bipartisan by saying, you know what, I agree with the president. I support Pelosi. Or you're getting those other Democrats that say, you know what, he's mentally deranged. We can't stand him. We don't agree with anything he says. We're not supporting Pelosi. You'll get those people. You think I'm crazy? That's going to happen. I'm telling you right now, that's going to happen. At some point, that will happen. I don't know when, but this new Congress comes in January, at least in the House. I think it's going to be divided, just as it was in 2016, because the Democrats are now having a problem getting together supporting Nancy Pelosi. And if just 16, because everyone votes in the House for the Speaker, and if just 16 Democrats say, we're not voting for her, well, then Trump's darn well going to get the Republican votes to get Nancy Pelosi the speakership. Isn't that obvious? It's interesting to me. So I don't know where he lands with this whole thing, but it will be interesting to see where he finishes off. And I want to see how far the Democrats are divided in 2020. You got progressives too, the far left progressives, and you got those decent liberals that are being like almost moderate to liberal being pushed to the left now, because there's this all of a sudden a surge in progressivism, which I can tell you is analytically the wrong tactic, because of all the Democrats that won across the country in the midterms that didn't run on a progressive platform, except for, if I can remember, Kyrsten Sinema. That's where I am on this whole thing. And that's how I think it will go down. Anyway, when we come back, new Attorney General, the allegations from the Democrats for him to be ousted. Lindsey Graham is now going to take the chair of the Judiciary Committee. Grassley's moving to finance. Why? And I'm going to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving this Thursday. Keep it here. You're listening to 107.7 The Bronx and 107.7thebronx.com. 107.7 The Bronx and 107.7thebronx.com. Live from the Killarney's Public House Studios. Welcome back, everybody. The Political Roundup. Once again, email is thepoliticalroundup@gmail.com. All right, to close it out here, I want to talk about the new Attorney General, Matt Whitaker. He is obviously, who I alluded to earlier, the replacement for Jeff Sessions, the temporary replacement, remember, because this is being challenged by Democrats. I think this will be temporary, and Trump will get an actual appointment in for the Attorney General. And Matt Whitaker has made comments about Bob Mueller's investigation. This is why the Democrats are Not too happy with this appointment. And Trump tweets, I think this is the 18th, so that was the other day. He tweets this, quote, "So funny to see little Adam," I don't want to say that in the air, talking about, but just read the tweet for yourself. It rhymes with fit. Talking about the fact that Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker was not approved by the Senate, but not mentioning the fact that Bob Mueller, who is highly conflicted, was not approved by the Senate. Now, by the way, he spelled that Adam Schiff's last name is spelled Schiff. He used TT instead. Say it out loud. That is the, quote, typo here. So he got a lot of criticism, but also a lot of laughs on both sides. And the tweet was quite interesting because now you have to look at. He drew you away originally. You thought you'd be talking. You thought you'd be reading more about Matt Whitaker and the actual thing, but your eyes can't stop looking at the last name of Adam Schiff and how he spelt it. It's a persuasion method. That's all it is. But I think Trump is going to appoint a new attorney general eventually. And look, there's Chris Christie, there's Lindsey Graham, there's other names that are rolling around. But I think that could be I don't think Lindsey Graham actually will be. Gowdy, I don't think will. We're hearing a lot about Pam Bondi, who's a Florida attorney general right now. So that will be quite interesting. Who gets picked by the president. And we have yet to find out. Also, other news, the Senate, speaking of Lindsey Graham, he is now taking the chair of the Judiciary Committee. Now Grassley, the more eye-opening part of the story was that Chuck Grassley, the senator from Iowa, is moving to chair the Finance Committee. Well, who moves to the Finance Committee? I mean, the Finance Committee is not a very serious committee compared to Judiciary. I mean, there's no comparison. Look who oversaw Brett Kavanaugh. The Judiciary Committee did. Judiciary Committee has incredible powers, way more than financial. There's some speculation to be done about why this happened. Now, I believe Lindsey Graham's performance during the Kavanaugh hearings is the reason why he is being promoted, in some sense, to the chair of the Judiciary Committee. And the way he acted, I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form if he decided to investigate Dianne Feinstein, the senator from California, for accusing her of leaking Dr. Ford's the letter from Dr. Ford originally during the Kavanaugh hearings. So that would be quite eye-opening if he were to do that. Grassley's more friends with the political opposition, with the Democrats. I can't see him doing something like that because he's more, ethical, things like that. He's not that kind of person. But Graham, watch out. He is gaining a lot of popularity among conservatives and the Republican Party because the way he acted during the Kavanaugh hearings, I feel like he's gained so much popularity with Republicans. All right. Thanksgiving is this Thursday. Ryder gets out on Tuesday, tomorrow. And I wish everyone the best. Happy Thanksgiving. Remember to keep politics out of the discussion, as we all do, as I hope you do as well. Don't take Chuck Schumer's advice and talk about taxes. I remember from last year. Okay. The Michelin Man Experience is coming on in about 5 to 10 minutes. Stay tuned. He's got a special show coming on. I will see you guys next Monday, for which we do not know what will happen again with the news cycle. We'll just go with the flow. I'll be happy to analyze next Monday as well. So, and maybe we'll hear more about Pelosi's speaker bid as well. It will be something to watch for sure. And we'll see how Jim Acosta does too. a lot of what I talked about still is in the process today, and things could change rapidly. A lot we didn't get to. Whatever I didn't get to will be news next week again. We'll be rolled up in the news. All right. We'll be here next Monday. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. You're listening to 107.7 The Bronx and 107.7thebronx.com. The Michelin Man Experience is up next.